Adoption brings our worlds together. Adoption brings our worlds together. Adoption brings our worlds together. Come and share with me. Adoption brings our worlds together. Adoption brings our worlds together. Adoption brings our worlds together. Come and share with me. Share with me.
Welcome to the Journey to Josiah Podcast. I'm your host, David Marshall, founder and CEO of Journey to Josiah Incorporated. I'm extremely honored today to have with me as my guest, Mr. Ben Fredrick. In the 1970s, as seniors in high school, Ben and his then girlfriend became pregnant and grappled with the issue. They made the decision to complete the pregnancy and place the baby for adoption. While Ben and the birth mother did not marry, they have remained friends to this day. 7 years ago, Ben and the birth mother met their daughter for the first time after 39 years. Ben is here to discuss his journey as a birth father. Ben has been a lifelong resident of Baltimore, where he grew up as one of 7 children. He married and had 3 children. Ben later remarried and has been blessed to have 2 stepdaughters. Ben is here to share his story of going through the pregnancy and adoption process, handling the adoption as his own children grew up, how the issue impacted his first and second marriages, and the reunification with the adopted child 7 years ago. This is a birth father story. Ben, thank you and welcome.
You're welcome, David. It's an honor to be here with you, and I really appreciate the work you're doing in our community.
Thank you very much. And again, I can't take lightly how I feel personally about having you here to share your story as a birth father. As I said to you when we spoke prior, um, we don't often get to hear from birth fathers. Oftentimes, birth fathers are are overlooked, I would say. And they're not thought of in this very, very sensitive and emotional process. But it takes two, right? We don't just have
Oh,
one
yes.
party when it comes to
No.
to creating a child. So thank you for
Yeah.
for being so led to come and share, because I'm very sure that this will be um an amazing blessing to not only the adoption community, but to the community at large. Because even outside of the adoption community, we as fathers are sometimes, even think about Father's Day, and that's we might hear about that the week before, right? Mother's Day comes
Yes.
in October practically. So, just excited to have the conversation
Yes.
father to father as well. So we're
Yeah.
gonna on in.
Yeah. Well, it's what I've learned to do is to like own my own stuff has really been important to me. Has been part of my personal journey. And so, I refer to this as we got pregnant. And
Yeah.
obviously, the female carries the baby, but it's something we did together. And so I put it in that reference just to own the fact that, I'm the father. This is something we did together. It's not just all on the woman that the woman's pregnant or she got pregnant. And no, we got pregnant. I was part of that.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I'm glad you said that, because the other part of it is, and we hear it all of the time when we are listening to women discuss pregnancy and these things. And I think sometimes it is a societal situation where it is really everything falls at the foot of a woman, right? And in terms
Yes.
of this child creation process, if you will. And So I thank you for saying that because, and I'm sure many mothers, many women will appreciate that because that's not something that it's just not said that way. And certainly we don't hear that from fathers, right?
Yeah. And,
There's just been a
and
permission to just be able to say, oh, that's all you,
mhm,
and I can
yes.
exit stage left.
And it's important to acknowledge also that the woman does bear the brunt of it, obviously. Us men, we can walk away from the situation
Yeah.
if we have that choice, we have that option just to walk away and be disconnected from it.
Hmm.
Uh, and the woman is stuck with, I mean, she's carrying the baby, she's involved, she can't just walk away from it.
Yeah.
So I want to acknowledge that also, that the woman does have has a different path than we
Hmm.
as men do. But I
Hmm.
also want to acknowledge that it's something that, we're both involved in.
Yeah. No, that's huge. That's
Yeah.
huge. Thank you
Yeah.
for that acknowledgement.
Yeah.
We're gonna go back into something that I read in your bio. So you come from a very large family. You said you're one of seven, yeah?
Yes. Yes. Yep.
So tell me about that. What's the lineup there?
Well, I have five sisters and one brother. I have two older sisters, so I'm the oldest male.
Okay.
And but I often, acknowledge and appreciate the role that my older sisters played in terms of, they cut the path, and so I got the benefit of them, teaching my parents how to be parents to us children.
Mm-hmm.
And but I also got the benefit of being the oldest male. And when I was 6 years old, I had four sisters at that point, and my mom was pregnant and she was due right around Christmas. And I didn't want anything for Christmas but a little brother. That was my
Wow.
wish.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And so my little brother was born actually on Christmas Eve. And
Wow.
I got a brother for Christmas that year, and I was just so happy.
I can imagine. That's pretty amazing. That's quite amazing. On Christmas Eve, so you definitely had a great Christmas present.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, the
Mm.
best ever. The best ever. Yeah. Yeah. So, we grew up in this Irish Catholic family, seven of
Mhm.
us. My mom was all about the family and, putting family first, and really just nurtured us and really blessed us in so many ways. And in high school, the birth mother and I, we were dating. We just loved each other so much. And we got pregnant in April of our senior year of high school. And that just brought so much shame to our family. To my mom and dad were just like mortified. They were just really didn't know what to do or how to deal with this. And it was just so contrary to what their beliefs were and what their actions were. And it really brought a lot of shame to them. And that transferred to me. So
Mhm.
yeah, that was a difficult time.
How did you have that conversation?
Well, it started out with uh there was a suspicion that there that the birth mother was pregnant. So we went to she went to Planned Parenthood. She was going to go with her best friend, her girlfriend, go to Planned Parenthood, get the pregnancy test, find out, and then we'd set a time that I was going to meet her a couple of blocks away from there. And so, I went to that corner, I waited for her, and she came and, you know, announced that she was pregnant. That was confirmed. And we had a, long conversation. I mean, it was just shocking. It was scary, but we had a conversation about it. There was a teacher of hers at her high school that we went and met with him and his wife and just sat and talked through the situation. And then it became, we had to tell our parents in some way. So that was really difficult and really challenging. Um, and it was suggested that I go see my father, but also go with somebody that he respected and trusted. So at that time in my life, my aunt was my favorite aunt. And I asked, I went and talked to her about it, and she agreed to come and meet with me. So we went to my father's office and sat with him and explained to him that, this was the situation and this was what had happened. And we agreed that we would tell my mother, that evening, that we would tell my mother. And
And with your father initially kind of having that conversation, could you get much in terms of emotion? How did he feel? How did it, yeah, how did he process that? Can you,
wow. Uh, it was a huge disappointment. He was disappointed in me, as he many times was growing up. I mean, that's one of the things that I carry is, my father's disappointment in me. I always wanted to make him proud of me. And this was a moment when he was not. And so that really hurt me. I just felt his disappointment and that I wasn't measuring up and that I'd done something, wrong. And um, yeah, there was a lot of weight to that.
how was it? So that's a heavy burden to carry. I think that kind of goes not so recognized in terms of the pressure sometimes that children have trying to live up to the standards of their parents. And we know that parents have these standards. We as parents definitely know this because we want the best for our children, right? But
Yes.
sometimes it does come with a lot of extra pressure and a lot of extra, yeah, just a lot of pressure, we'll say. Um,
Yes.
but you had your aunt there as a support. Um,
Yes.
was she able to contribute in any way during that time to somewhat, we'll say, maybe lessen
Oh, yeah.
some of the
Yeah.
emotion, maybe?
Yeah. I mean, my aunt was, she was really terrific because, going through high school, there's always all of these, things about growing up and being a teenager and the hormones going. It's just
Yeah.
like, uh, you know, one moment my parents love me, the next moment my parents hate me, just, and living up to my parents' standards and
Mhm.
expectations, just all the stuff you go through in high school. But
Yeah.
my aunt, I could always go and talk to her. And where my father had a lot of judgment and a lot of expectations, and he's trying to raise me and teach me right and wrong, which I totally honor and respect and appreciate. That he had expectations for me, so he wanted me to be his version of me. And but my aunt, she would always take the time to listen to me and accept me for who I am, and just really, uh, that's where I got that emotional connection and that really just like unconditional love and support. Whereas from my parents, I guess there were always, I always felt like there were conditions there, that they wanted things for me. They wanted me to be, to live a good life, to be a good man, and to, to work hard and achieve and be a good person. So they certainly had expectations for me. And I felt that as more conditional love, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other advantage is that my aunt was my father's older sister, so she kind of came at it
Mhm.
from that perspective. And so she was
Yeah.
able to really, just be there to, support me and encourage me, but also talk to my father and let my father know that, these things happen. And, as parents and adults, the parents and adults have to deal with these things, and it's not the end of the world. And so, that was her words really helped to soften my dad and, you know, help him to, see the situation for what it was and maybe not being quite so terrible.
Yeah. No, that's important. And I there's something else very important about what you said was that you were able to talk to your aunt and, you know, of a certain generation, we really were not conditioned to speak to our parents in matters of the heart, so to speak.
Yeah.
There was still that time of seen and not heard,
Yes.
and so we didn't really feel a lot of the times that we had the permission, the space to be able to have these kinds of conversations. So it says a lot that your aunt was that person that allowed that space. Did she have children?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And did you
She had only 3 children.
she
So
had 3, okay. And it's funny, you could say only coming from a family of 7.
yes. Mhm.
And, And of course, you didn't live in your aunt's home, but do you feel like um, your aunt was that kind of parent, even with her own children, that she
Oh yeah.
listened and gave them that space?
Yeah, she was a kindergarten teacher, so she was used to dealing with little kids.
Yeah.
Her son is the same age as me, and we grew up together.
Mhm.
We'd spend the night at each other's houses, and we had a good relationship together. And so, yeah, he was. My aunt was that way with her own children. Just
Mhm.
had more time and more understanding. When you're trying to raise 7 kids, you're running an organization. You got to be. It's like you don't have
Right.
time. You don't have time to sit around and listen to people cry or whatever. It's just like.
I never thought of running an organization. So now I think about my own grandmother's family a little different because she came from a family of 15. So yeah, an organization it would be. There's a
Yes.
system here.
Yes.
So I get it. I get it. So so with that, you had the conversation with your father, and and then I'm assuming later, then you had to have this very same conversation with your mother. How did that how did that work? How did that look?
That was really hard. It was really hard to admit to my mom that I had done this, and that I was in this situation, and I know that it hurt her a lot. Uh but actually what happened was my father told her before we told her together. So she already knew. And I don't know what that initial conversation was like, but I think with my father talking to her ahead of time, it helped to soften things, and so
Mm.
she could be a little more present and not as shocked, when I talked to her. Yeah.
Did you know that your father was gonna have the conversation prior?
No, I did not. I did
Okay.
not. Yeah.
Do you think it helped?
I think it helped a lot. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I think that helped a lot. Yeah.
And do you think that possibly with your father doing it, he had time to process it and therefore maybe approach it differently when he had the conversation?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And
think
I'm
so.
sure
Yeah.
your aunt had a lot to do with that. So
Yes.
God bless her for
Yeah.
that.
Yes, yes. And so I would just say to anybody in this situation or in any kind of difficult situation like this is that, finding that other person that can kind of be there to support you when you're trying to do something difficult, just to have that support there, have another person there, it can kind of like um, run interference, I suppose, or it
Yeah.
just helps to have a bridge there, um,
Yeah.
to be able somebody that in my case, I knew that my father respected his older sister, and she loved me unconditionally. So that was just a beautiful. I was very fortunate to have that. Have that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's huge. That's definitely huge.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. The harder part, I guess, was speaking to the birth mother's father.
Mm,
So yeah.
yeah.
So I went with her. We did this together. We also had there was a priest in her church. He came with us, and so he was the adult um, that the birth mother's father. He respected him because of his position as a priest. He was also a family
Mhm.
friend. There was a relationship there also. So he was there, and but that did not go as well. He got very angry. The birth mother's father got angry, and I remember that I left rather suddenly because he kind of like got up. He had a gun in the house, and so that was very frightening for me.
Yes.
And I just remember him saying, "Get out of here," and so I just like got up and left. I was like. Eh, yeah, so that was scary and challenging.
Yeah, and probably somewhat traumatizing.
Yeah.
Um, it's so interesting, the difference in terms of who was the safe adult to go to. So the priest, and in my own mind, I would think, especially in that day and time, that just me thinking, wow, that almost would have been the last person I would have thought of. How what was how did the priest um, approach it? What was the priest's response?
I don't really remember a lot of the specifics about, the conversation or how that went.
Mhm. Okay.
I just remember the feeling of being really nervous and scared going in there. And then, he, uh, you know, um, the birth mother's father, getting angry and upset and leaving quickly and being scared. That's
Yeah.
what I remember about that. Yeah. I don't
Hmm.
remember, specifically about what was said or not said and that sort of thing. Yeah, I
That's
will say that the birth mother's family, so her father remarried, so he was in his second marriage. And um, the birth mother, her stepmother was not really like so involved with her life. It wasn't really a great relationship between the birth mother and her stepmother. It was not really a particularly good relationship, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I will say about my mom is that uh, I, bless her, she's a saint. She really stepped up so that she took the birth mother to all of her prenatal appointments. And,
Wow.
so it's like whatever embarrassment or shame she had, she like set that aside and said, this child needs help. She needs to be cared for. We want to make sure that this pregnancy goes well or as well as it can be. So she really, I'm just am really beside myself with how she handled that,
Mm.
just with grace and love and just acceptance of like, this is what it is. Let's make the best of it. And
Mhm,
really,
mhm.
really helped that. And just, it was huge. For me, that was just really huge, the way she responded to it.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
Especially because considering the conversation of that kind of initial disappointment, but
Yes.
then shifting that, turning that around, and realizing there's something that takes precedence over my own feelings, over my own emotions, and being able to step out and say, but there's a baby here. There were young. I mean, you were kids still, and then there's a baby.
Yes.
So I've got to still step into the role and do what
Yeah.
needs to be done. So that does say a lot.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes we do as parents, we uh, people in general, we get caught in ourselves, right? And sometimes we
Yes.
are not able to look at what is the bigger picture here because we're just stuck. Tell me then, so you've now had the conversation with both parents,
Yeah.
and
Let's roll back the clock a little bit.
sure.
So, when the birth mother, when she went to Planned Parenthood, got the test, confirmed that she was pregnant, and then we go to her teacher's house, who
Mhm.
was just one of those teachers, just like so kind and really connects with the students, and you could just trust him. And so we went and met him and just like talked through it, and it was just really helpful to have an adult, somebody that was disconnected from the situation, not a parent, not, somebody who's like a little more objective about it, just to kind of like talk through, what was going on, what our options were, what we could think about doing. When the birth mother went to Planned Parenthood, they confirmed the pregnancy, and then like immediately it was like, I don't want to say pressure. Maybe there was an assumption that she would get an abortion, and this would take care of it.
Mm.
And and she didn't do that right away. So we went and we talked about it and talked about it with her, with her teacher, a trusted person, and just kind of fleshed it all out and explored all the options. I'll say that uh, the birth mother and I, we were really in love with each other. We were dating for a little over a year, and
Mhm.
I just, I, I, I just loved her. I still do.
Mhm. Mhm.
There's still a love in my heart for her after all these years. But at that time, we thought, well, we'll graduate from high school, we'll go to college, and we'll get married and start a family. That
Yeah.
was like it was that kind of a relationship. I just like knew that this was a good woman for me,
Okay.
and a really good relationship, a good, strong relationship. So, that's where the relationship was at that time.
Mhm.
And then to have this baby pop up, it was like, I was like, I had just turned 18. I hadn't just barely getting ready to graduate from high school. I'm like, there's no way I can raise this child in a way that would be good for the child or be good for me or be good for the birth mother, just to try and start a family at that age. With that, when we had ambitions to go to college and, get a better life, that would really not be a good situation for us. So
Mhm.
we talked to the teacher, flushed through, the different options. And one of the options was, to get married, have the child and get married. One of the options
Mhm.
was to, have an abortion and just kind of like be done with it and move on with our lives. And I remember walking away from that conversation. And what I remember about that today is that having this child, getting pregnant, like a child is a gift. And, to me, it's a gift from God. This
Mhm.
child was conceived in love. This was a gift from God. And I remember just, following through the logic of that. Anytime anybody gives you a gift, what do you do with that gift? What are your choices? So somebody gives me a gift on my birthday. Like if I don't like it, I could throw it away
Mhm.
and just be like, I don't really like this, so just throw it away. I could give it to somebody else who might appreciate it, right? Or I could keep the gift if I like it, and if I like it, I'll keep it. So I can
Yeah.
keep the gift, I can throw it away, or I can give it to somebody else who would appreciate it. Those are the three options
Mhm.
that we looked at and talked about. And the idea of aborting this child, it didn't fit with our values. That somebody gives you a gift, you just throw it away. Like that
Yeah.
doesn't really, that's what I equate an abortion to.
Mm.
And so just the notion of, there are a lot of people in this world that can't have children, that are hurting and are in pain, that want a child. And so to be able to offer that to a couple that's hurting because they can't have children, that just really just set a guidepost. It fit with our values. It fit with what we wanted to do. And we knew that the next 9 months would be difficult and challenging, but we're like, we created this situation.
Mhm.
So it just seemed like the responsible thing to do. It fit with our values. And that's what we decided to do. That's why we decided to go through with the pregnancy and put the baby up for adoption.
And was that conversation had along with the teacher? Was the teacher part of
Yes,
that
he was.
decision making
Yeah, he
process?
was part of that. And again, Patty and the birth mother and I, we talked about it and talked it through. And it was our decision.
Mhm.
It was completely our decision. And I
Yeah.
think having the support of the teacher to help talk it through and talk through the options and talk about what our values are and like what really aligns with us was a big part of that.
And just a side note, we have these are the reasons why we have to celebrate teachers, right? In this country, teachers are not celebrated, they're not respected. We see that in the pay disparity even with teachers. I was looking yesterday at a protest, I want to say in the Cecil County public school system, where
Mhm.
they are deciding to cut funding in the school system, and of course this will impact teachers. And so I had to put that in there because teachers serve as that safe space. To this day, that has not changed, generationally, that
Mhm.
teachers are that safe space. And so I celebrate that teacher for being that safe space. And I celebrate all teachers who are still that safe space for our young people, because young people are dealing with so many different things. And so,
Yes.
so just hearing that, and even going back to the fact that your aunt was a kindergarten teacher, so there's that parallel there, and the way that
Yes.
teachers are those kind of they're the unsung heroes in so many
Yes.
different
Mhm. Mhm.
um cases. So collectively you all had made the decision
Yeah.
with
I will
your
I will say about teachers, I have a
Mhm.
niece that's a teacher, and when
Mhm.
I talk to her, it's just like, the thing to me about teachers is that administrators, politicians have put so much on them that they spend so much time filling out reports and doing administrative tasks that takes away from their connecting with the kids on a daily basis. And that I think that that's really, more so than the pay, is the just the administrative burdens, and they're just making it into like a mechanic kind of a thing, and taking away that personal connection. I think that's really,
It's very hard. I taught for
yeah.
8 years. And
Did you?
and
So
I absolutely, my mother's a retired educator. My brother's in the education system. We know it all too well. So yes, it is. That's so much of the issue.
Yeah.
Another day's journey, right? But so tell me from your perspective, even you had that conversation, and I love the gift. I love that thought process in terms of what do we do with a gift? And so many times I don't know today if we are looking at children as gifts. Um, and I say that based on how I see children being treated. And again, having been an educator and seeing so many of these
Yes.
different kinds of backgrounds that our children come from, the burdens on children today are unimaginable, unimaginable. And so I love that, a gift. And what do we do with the gift? And like you said, sometimes we might get that gift we're not so sure about. And so, but
Mhm.
even still, we're taught to be grateful. We're still taught to say thank you no matter what, because it was the thought that counted, right? And
Yes.
so I love how that thought process very, I would say there's a very mature thought process in terms of then you saying, well, there are individuals out here who really, really want children, and we can gift them with the best of us,
Yes.
because even in the adoption um world, and I always like to tear down this misconception that birth parents weren't interested, as they're hearing from your very own story that there were circumstances, right? And you operated completely and totally out of love. And
Yes.
it was that love that for your child that said, you know what, we can't at this juncture, but our child still deserves the greatest of life that we pray that we can provide. Also, you thought even about prospective adoptive parents
Yes.
and what this would do, because any of us, and I always talk about this, when you want to be a parent, there's nothing like it in this world, nothing like it. And that's consuming, especially if you're in a place where you feel like you can't. And
Yes.
so I think that was huge. But even with that, tell me a bit, what what was the emotional toll on you personally when, because you came to this decision, huge decision, but still there's an emotional toll. What was that for you?
Oh my gosh. Well, there's this shame within the family.
Mm-hmm.
And I will tell you that from the time that we had the baby, when the birth occurred, and uh, we were there with the baby for a short period of time. I think we signed the papers like a month later to put the baby, officially put the baby in adoption, but it was in foster care in the interim, so we never took the baby home or anything like that. But from the time that we signed those adoption papers, it was never discussed in my family. My sisters, my brother, they've never asked me about it. They've never said anything about it. It's like this big family secret. It's like this big secret in the family. Well, we don't talk about that. It's just too painful. So for 39 years, nobody talked about it. And then 39 years later, we connected with the child and met the child. But yeah, so there was, just that shame and that secrecy, that family secret, had been going on for a long time. That So when the pregnancy occurred in April, we found out, in June or something like that, and decided to, go on this path. I did not go to college right away. I worked for a year. I took off a year, worked for a year. And so I was in this job. I was working at this job, and I didn't tell anybody about the pregnancy. This was just like a secret part of my life. And so, while I did well at work and, I learned things and progressed in work, this was just like something that was like a secret. And so keeping something a secret by people in a meeting or interacting with, that was hard. One day, I, one of my, boy, one of the most painful moments for me was one day the birth mother came to my work. I worked in a retail store, and she came to work, and she just wanted to see me and talk to me and whatever. And I sort of like pretended like I didn't know her.
Mm.
I pretended like I didn't know her, like she was just a customer. I was just trying to get her out of the store as quick as possible because she was obviously pregnant, and I didn't want anybody to know. And I'll tell you that I talked to her about this a few years ago, and made amends with her and like own this, that the way I treated her, just like being dismissive, or it was just, it must have hurt her tremendously. And I'm so sorry for her, the way I treated her in that moment. But it's yeah, I'm really embarrassed to share that, because it's not really the way I would want to treat her. It doesn't reflect my love for her. It does reflect the shame and embarrassment that I felt about the situation. And again, it really is a good example of that a man can kind of like disengage from the situation, but a woman, she carries that with her 24/7. You're walking around, you're obviously pregnant, like nobody, you can't hide it. You can't not be pregnant, for even an
Yes.
hour, like it's there all the time. So, just acknowledging that. I just want to acknowledge that and say that 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 was a difficult time for me.
Absolutely. But let me say this. I Everything you're saying is absolutely correct in terms of the fact that, as we talked about earlier, women, they can't they that is something that they cannot disengage from. They cannot hide it, and that is why women are often catching the brunt of so much criticism when it comes to this. But what I also need you to give yourself credit for was that you felt there are some people who wouldn't feel anything. They do that without a second thought at all. And while in that moment, that was the action, what I'm hearing is that was not where you were emotionally. It was like, you go into some kind of survival mode.
Yes.
And it sounds like that's where you were, but it was not that you didn't care. You just, and we also go back to the fact that there's a maturity factor, right? Think
Yes.
about how young you, so we do things when we're younger. It goes back biblically, right? When I was a child, I thought as a child, but when I
Yes.
became a man, I put away those childish things. Yeah.
Yes.
And so what I'm saying to you is, even in this, the acknowledgement of this is huge, but you also need to give yourself some grace, because you never at one point never said, well, I just didn't care and I just didn't want to be bothered.
Right.
That is something that
Mhm.
unfortunately happens all too often. And so, but I know that, um, but I- but I know for you, and I don't discount this either. It's probably very healing to acknowledge it and to say that. I just want you to know that. I just want you to give yourself a little bit of grace, even in this.
Thank
Um,
you.
uh, oh, absolutely, absolutely. And so you throughout that, let me ask you this. So throughout that 9-month period there, was there ever the point where did you all ever go back and forth, not with each other, but I guess, you know, internally in terms of, is this a decision we really want to make in terms of adoption? Or do you feel like we came to this, we came to this early on when we had this conversation with our teacher and we're good?
Uh, there were times when it was uncomfortable. I just mentioned one scenario. We went to, they called them Lamaze classes. I don't know if they still do that or not, where
Yeah,
you
I don't know. Yeah.
we went to the hospital and there was a group of people. There were maybe 10 couples, 10 or 12 couples in this class, and you have pillows and you're learning how to breathe and go through, they're trying to prepare you for, going through the delivery process of, how do you breathe? How do you handle the pain and all these kind of things? And so we were in this room with, 10 or 12 other couples, and everybody else was married and we weren't.
Hmm.
And so I noticed that that was hard. They would say, take this technique and go home and practice it and then come back the next week. And we come back the next week and we really hadn't practiced it because we
Yeah.
don't live together. And so, just going through that whole process was hard. I don't recall a time when we really talked about, making a different decision.
Okay.
It was hard, it was challenging. And so I guess there were days where I wish it would just go away. And I'm sure that the birth mother felt the same way, but we were we were committed to it. We
Hmm.
committed to it and we're just going to follow through and, go through the hard part. And that's just what we did.
And you said it was approximately a month after the baby was born that then the adoption papers. I'm not talking. Excuse me. I'm gonna I'm gonna assume this is the termination of parental rights document. Is that what that would have been?
I, I don't know what the legal document was. I just
Okay.
refer to them as the adoption papers. I don't know
Yeah.
what the legal term, I don't remember what the legality of it was. And I would assume now that you're mentioning termination of parent rights, that's probably
Hmm.
what it was.
Hmm.
But it was just, yeah, we had to sign the papers that said, yes, we are definitely putting the baby up for adoption and relinquish any rights to it. Yes.
Yes. In that time, were you able to be present at the birth?
Yes.
You were.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I was there. Mhm.
And what was that experience for you?
It was scary.
Hmm.
I mean, I'd never been in a situation like that before. And, the birth mother's going through all this pain and the trials of it. And, she was screaming and I was doing everything I could to, comfort her and be with her. But it was like, I'm 18 years old and I'm like, we hadn't really practiced that much. And we're kind of like in this situation. It was scary and I didn't know what to do. And I was doing the best I could, but it was hard and it was scary. Yeah.
Hmm.
And they ended up doing an emergency cesarean section. So,
Mm.
just the trauma of like something's going wrong and like, I don't know what's going on, it's like all these people are running around and things are happening. And I just was like, out of my element and not really knowing what was going on. That was very scary.
That sounds. Were your parents or were there any parents or anybody present? Not necessarily in the delivery room, but just did you have that support maybe waiting for you outside?
I don't remember. I don't
Okay.
remember.
And after the baby was born, did you get any time with the baby?
Yes. Yeah. When the baby was first born, they brought the baby to us and we were able to hold the baby for a brief period of time.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. And so it's different then when, when there's a baby coming to when there's a baby that's now here.
Yes.
And what was that for you being able to lay eyes on the baby and hold the baby?
It really, just the culmination of all of the work, all the effort, all the anxiety, all of the feelings, both happy feelings and the shame and the embarrassment. It's just kind of like all of that kind of like coming together. It's like, oh, we made it. It's just a
Mm.
big sense of relief, like we made it.
Wow.
And then it was also like holding this baby, like this is what we created.
Mhm.
This is what we created. We created a new life, and isn't she beautiful? And it's just like,
Mhm.
that was really remarkable, just to hold a baby in your hands that you created.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
And I would imagine, was that the first time you ever held a baby? Well, no,
Uh,
because you had a little brother, right?
little
Well, you
brothers.
were little when you had the,
Yes. Yeah.
this was the first time?
Yes.
Yeah,
It's just
that's huge.
remarkable just to hold this
Mhm.
life in your hands. And it's just, babies are so small, but yet they have
Mhm.
all of the elements there. I mean, the fingers and the fingernails, the face, and it's just everything is there, but it's
Mhm.
so tiny and so small. And
Mhm.
then you're like, wow, I was this small one day, and here I am, a big man.
Right.
How did that happen? Yeah. So it's remarkable. It's a miracle. It's a gift. It's just really, yeah. So there
Mhm.
was the fascination, the awe of holding a new life in my hands. There's the awe of I created this. This is
Mhm.
this is a new life that we created together.
Mhm.
And then all of the stress, the frustration, the shame, just all of those emotions that of this journey. And it was a difficult journey. It was a challenging journey in so many ways. And just the sense of, the relief, like we made it, it's over, like we did what we set out to do. We knew it was going to be hard, and it was hard, and here we
Mhm.
are. We did it. Yeah.
So when you and I would venture to believe, and kind of I glean a bit from what you're saying, that there were the set of emotions that you had leading up to the birth, and then we have the birth, we hold the baby, we see the baby, and all of this,
Mhm.
and are really just in awe of what God has done.
Yes.
Because no matter what, this is God's doing, and it is mighty wonderful. And so, um after all of that, what was life after for you, and having to kind of try to move forward?
Yeah. Um, talk a little bit about grief. So, uh, in my work and grief is that, we most commonly associate grief with somebody dying. And so somebody dies and we grieve that they're not here anymore. One of the aspects of grief that is not talked about or recognized or acknowledged as much is what we call the hopes and dreams that I had for the relationship. So anytime I'm in a relationship with somebody, it's like what we're doing today is fun and it's great to know you and be with you. But then there's also like the hopes and dreams of like, okay, here we are today, and then we're gonna, if 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 I'm with a woman, it's like, okay, is this, I mean, when the birth mother and I, when we were dating, I mentioned before that, we were totally in love with each other, very compatible, and we had hopes and dreams of being married and being together for the rest of our lives, growing old together, uh, you know, getting married, starting a family, and just we had the hopes and dreams of what that relationship was going to be like. Uh, and they get dashed. So part of the story here is that um, you know, my parents basically forbade me from seeing the birth mother, from dating her again. It was just like, we're gonna get through this and then it's over. Like you can't see her
Mhm.
again, you can't date her again, like this is done. Um, and that's an unnatural way to end a relationship.
Yes.
So if I'm dating somebody, we're dating for a period of time and then it doesn't work out, or we disagree, or we're fighting, for whatever, we break up. There's a breakup, like I don't want to see you anymore because, or, for whatever reason, and then I move on with my life. Well, this is something that was imposed upon me by my parents, forbidding me. So it's just like I still loved her. I wanted to be with her. but I couldn't. So around that, there was a lot of grief around that, and dashing the hopes and dreams that I had for my relationship with the birth mother. Going through this intense emotional experience with this baby, and then holding the baby in my hands, and then putting the baby up for adoption. It was mixed feelings, because on the one sense there's relief, like, "Oh, we did it, here we go, pass it on to the next, pass it on to the adopted parents." But then there was like, wow, this is my child. We created this child together. What if, we could raise it together? What if we could make this happen in some way? So there's, holding that, all that potential, with that baby, and then walking away from that.
That's interesting. So then what I'm hearing is there are the different layers to the grief. So grieving a few things at once. Because
Yes.
when we think about grief, we think about it just being we're just grieving this one thing, if I can say it that way.
Oh,
But inside
the
of
grief
grief,
is a change. Changes is what causes grief. Yeah.
and a few different things can happen in that, because you said it, not only grieving the how do I phrase this, the process that took place thereafter, the adoption process, we'll say that. So grieving that as birth parents, but the other part of it that is the unspoken thing that I've never heard are the hopes and dreams, because we all do have hopes and dreams, many of them. And so having those, seeing those go, having to process that. Um, what, how did you, what was the work that you did in order to be able to process this grief?
Well, it wasn't very good. Again, I was young. I didn't really have a lot of support. And so, one of the things that we did was, the adoption agency was really very good and very terrific. And so we, they had us meet with groups of other young people that were going through a similar situation. So I remember we went to meetings where we'd be in a circle with a group of 10 or 12 or 15 people, and the people from the adoption agency were there. It was kind of like a group therapy session, I guess you could say, or and so the birth mother and I basically told our story. We were able to tell our story and talk about our experiences and share those with other people that were just starting this path, of going through with the pregnancy and adoption. And there was certainly some healing in that. So that was a good way to process and heal. It was also a good excuse for me to see the birth mother, to be with her, because
Okay.
otherwise I was forbidden from doing that. After after the adoption went through, the birth mother went to college. She went locally. I was here locally. And so I can remember, just trying to meet with her in the lunchroom at lunchtime at college, just to be able to spend time together. It was just like, I was just really wanted to be with her. And, just doing what I could. So it was not really, I wouldn't call it a particularly healthy process, dealing with that grief and that loss. One of the things I ended up doing was I ended up marrying her best friend. And
Wow.
I started dating her best friend. This was, maybe 2 years later, I started dating her best friend, and we got along fine, and we eventually got married. And part of, as I look back, I don't know that I was conscious of it at the time. I don't know that I was, but looking back, it was, marrying her best friend was a way to stay connected to her.
Yeah, I can see that.
And it's uh, when I put it that way, it seems a little sick, but that's a perspective that I had. And I don't want to take anything away from my wife that, I loved her dearly. And, we raised 3 children together and had a reasonably good life. We ended up divorcing after 22 years of marriage, but, I loved her dearly. So,
I'm gonna go back with that word about grace again.
yeah.
Just because even in that, I everyone has their way of processing, and in processing, we all have our ways of handling,
Yes.
and it's gonna look different for everyone. I think sick has its own place,
Hmm.
and I personally don't, and I would hope that no one else involved sees in that way. And least of all, I would hope I'm acting like I'm somebody. My degrees are in music. I always tell people this. My degrees are in music. I preface all of this by saying this for anyone who might think, oh, let me go and talk to him because I am not anybody's therapist. I just kind of speak out of the spirit is what
We're just
I
men.
always say.
What do you
And
play?
huh?
What do you play?
What do I play?
What instrument do you play? Yeah.
I'm a singer. I'm an opera
Singer.
singer by
Fantastic.
profession, but I started
Okay.
out playing the piano. That was at 9. I
Okay.
took piano lessons until I was 15, and then moved into voice. And so it's interesting you asked that
Good.
because I think as a musician we become uh, we're naturally very very sensitive, and we have
Hmm.
to and uh, so much of the art is driven by emotion. There has
Yeah.
to be emotion in order to be compelling in what we're doing.
Yeah. I started playing drums when I was 11.
Really? Okay.
Yes.
And so uh that's a side. I'll get to a side. I might come back to that. I like that. Um, but I say all of that to say in terms of your processing and handling, um, you handled it the best way that you could.
Yes.
And And again, it'll look different for everybody. What I'm hearing is not that there was this, you have people who do things for revenge purposes. It wasn't that.
No.
This was the way you were trying to deal. And so that's why I say that you have to extend yourself some grace even in that. There's nothing about what you said that sounds at all sick. I could never, I would hope that I don't want you to think that way, bottom line.
I
Um,
understand. Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
understand, I get what you're saying, because I
Yes.
guess in looking back at it, you're like, what kind of way did but that was the way that you were
That was,
processing at that
yes.
time.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
said you had 3 children. Were you ever in that, were you able to have conversation? I remember you said with family, with your siblings, that it just was not spoken about in terms
Right.
of the
Yes.
adoption. Were you able to have this conversation with your children?
Yes. When when the daughter was about to turn 18, my wife and I, we talked about it and we said, any day this child could come knocking at our door. When she turns 18, she would be free to, seek out her birth parents. And we said, we better prepare our children. So,
Mhm.
so I remember sitting with my children and telling them the story, telling them what happened. And my oldest daughter, she like looked at me and she's like, "You mean I'm not the oldest?"
Wow.
And
Mhm. How
that
old was
was,
she?
oh my gosh, let's see. She would have been, she was probably like 14 or 15.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that was a surprise and a shock for her. That was like, oh, maybe I'm not really in the position I'm in. So that
Mhm.
was a monumental thing for her. But I remember explaining to my children that there's being a father and there's being a daddy. Like this young lady, I'm her biological father, but like I'm your daddy. Like, I changed your diapers. I play
Yes.
with you every day. I fix your lunch every day. Like, this is what being a dad is doing these things on a daily basis. This other person, somebody else did that. Somebody else is their daddy. I'm your daddy. I'm the
Mhm.
biological father of this person. But, just to, yeah, put it in that context, I think brought them some comfort.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did they over time did uh did the conversation happen? Were there other questions that maybe happened over time, or when you had this one conversation, it kind of just stayed there?
I think it just pretty much stayed there.
Okay.
Yeah. There might have been some times when maybe my children were arguing with me and they might like bring it up as like a little dig kind of a thing. But that's what children do when they're seeking power, I suppose.
Um, yeah, I suppose. Let me ask you this. Now, this might sound like I'm being a little petty at the moment. Did you have what do you have? Sons, daughters, both?
I have two daughters and a son.
Okay. I would
Mhm.
venture to believe women don't come get me. Was it the daughters that decided to use this as a little dig?
Yeah. Yes.
That's why I preface it by saying that might sound a little petty, but that's just my little lighthearted moment. Nobody get
Mhm.
offended by me saying that. It's just
Yeah.
it's just the nature of the beast sometimes. So you said in our conversation prior to this that that you also got involved in group therapy. Was that where was that in the was that way later? When did you do, and
Yeah.
this outside of the adoption age, which I that's pretty remarkable for that time. We think about these kinds of therapies in terms of the birth parents as more of a current thing. So that's remarkable, and I don't want to, discount that because that's
Mhm.
huge. But moving forward a bit in terms of the group therapy and what you did after, uh, when did you decide to do that?
Yeah. I have often described myself as like I'm a seeker. I'm a seeker. Like, seeking spiritual growth has always been a part of my life. Spiritual growth, positive thinking has always been a part of my life, I suppose.
Hmm.
And when I was in my 30s, in my business, we had a mentor. We hired a guy as a consultant. He ended up being my mentor, and he connected with me with a therapist. We went through some counseling in regards to my marriage at the time, and then I got involved in a group therapy situation. And so in that group, and this was in my late 30s, I was able really to talk about uh, the pregnancy and the adoption kind of for the first time,
Okay.
really in an open way. And Um, I mentioned that uh, my sisters and my brother and my parents, like, they never talked about this after the adoption papers were signed. Like, it was just something we didn't talk about. And so I remember going through in group therapy, like talking about it for the first time in, you know, 18 years or something, that it was like, it was very refreshing, and it was great to have a space to be able to talk about it and explore my feelings. Um, to kind of talk through that day when the birth mother came to my work, came to the store, and I was embarrassed. Like, I hadn't like
Yes.
thought about that story for so long, but just to be able to
Mhm.
like bring that up, and it was about that time that I contacted the birth mother to explain my regret and my remorse, and about the way I treated her that day. So that was very helpful, being
Mhm.
being part of that group. Yeah.
And I know that in our conversation, and I don't want
And
to
I'll
go ahead.
say it's even really been more recently, in the last few years, that I've told more people uh, about this story.
Mhm.
And it's just remarkable how we keep secrets. We keep secrets out of embarrassment or shame or whatever, or fear of judgment. But once I reveal the story, it's remarkable how many other people have similar stories. And so
Yeah.
what I've learned is that if I allow myself to be vulnerable, it invites other people's vulnerabilities. And when we can be vulnerable and honest with each other, that's where connections occur. That's really what we all want, is connection with other people. And trying to pretend that everything's great isn't the way to create connection.
That's one of those common conversations we have in terms of social media and the facades. Leave it
Yes.
to that, and everyone's life is the greatest life on earth.
Yes.
But it's what, there is this strong desire for everyone to project something else. And really going back to what you said, because of shame, no one ever wants to be seen as, not being okay and everything not being perfect. When in real, we know that that is not logical. We know it's not real and authentic, because whose life is? I mean, so let's look at this. When we think about that, everything that's happening in the royal family, people would say, oh my goodness, well, that's the king and the queen. Everything must be perfect. But they're people, and
Yes.
life happens. Family breaks down, health breaks down. No one
Mhm.
is excluded from the real things of life. So,
Yes.
like you said, when we are able to be authentic and speak, that is so healing, and it's just a necessary thing. And also, to what you said, it kind of then helps other people to then kind of be able to uh, also be authentic, and it takes that.
Yes.
It's um it's so necessary, and it's really okay, and there's so much community in that. We
Yes.
find that there's so much support. I know that for me, um last May, I want to say it was, or maybe the May before last, um, I I decided to publicly talk about mental illness and my own struggle with it. And I did
Mhm.
it via social media. And the first thing I said was, it doesn't have a look, it doesn't have a face. And you see me a certain way, looking a certain way,
Mhm.
presenting in this way, but you don't see the unspoken thing. And what came of that in those comments was remarkable, um, because then people felt like they could be authentic based on the fact that, oh wow, if he was brave enough, and I believe that there's a responsibility. Not that I'm on the level of any, you know, Oprah Winfrey or anybody huge, like, but I do believe in my own network. I have a responsibility,
Mhm.
and it's also healing for me when I'm able to say that. So you saying that is huge. And also, when we talked about the you had group therapy, and then I know you told me about a men's group that you were also affiliated with. Were they separate?
They were separate. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell me about that
Yeah.
experience.
Which one? I've been part of a number of men's
You've
groups.
been
So
okay.
I mentioned the consultant that worked with our company. He became my mentor. He ran a group where we met. We met on Tuesday nights,
Hmm.
and it was a group of other people that he consulted with, and he would just pull people in from these other companies, these other organizations. I would say that we were all, successful, accomplished people, but we all had issues with relationships of one kind or another.
Hmm.
And so we would get together and we would talk through our relationships. And he was a great teacher. He just taught me so many concepts and principles of human relationships and how we are. It's just really, really incredible experience. I've also been a part of a group. There's an organization called the Mankind Project.
Hmm.
And so you go through an intense weekend to kind of orient yourself to how they work and how they operate, and just really kind of like peeling back the mask that we all carry and being authentic and being honest and being accountable. And then after the weekend, you can join a group. There are groups all over the world.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so I've been part of this men's group since, gosh, 18 years I've been in this group, and we meet every Thursday night and we work on ourselves. And that's just been
Wow.
really fascinating, remarkable. And 6 years ago, I took my mentor. He died in 2009, and that was challenging to feel his loss, and just that he was just such an icon in my life.
Mm.
And in 2017, I decided to start a group based on his model.
Wow.
And so in my world, I just started meeting young people, and we would talk about business, but then we'd talk about a little bit about our personal lives and just people that were in challenging situations. I was like, I'm going to just start asking them. So I got a group of people together, and we meet on Tuesday nights, and we talk about our lives and our challenges as young entrepreneurs and business people, but also it's really all about our relationships. And so that's been really, really rewarding.
That's huge. I think that it's kind of that when we go through challenges, and everybody does, as we've said, it is it is huge when we are able to then use those things to be able um to help others, because that's really what it's about. And we go through things not for ourselves, but so that
Yes.
we can really help others to maneuver through those challenges. And so
Mhm.
that's pretty remarkable. And probably one of the bigger parts of this conversation. Tell me about the reunification process um,
Oh my gosh.
with your daughter, because you were able to,
Yes.
after all of that, then meet her. Tell me
Yeah.
about that.
Well, during her young life, we would get notes and pictures from the adoption agency. So periodically, I don't know, once a year, every other year, I don't remember what the frequency was, but we would get a note from the adoptive parents, and they would tell us how she's doing in school, and she plays music, and I was like, oh, it goes for me.
Yes.
And just how she was doing. We get pictures every once in a while, and we could write letters back. So there was, like I say, once a year, every other year, we'd get something from them. And I remember when she turned 18, the birth mother, I think, bought her earrings, and I bought her a matching pendant necklace, and it had like a birthstone in it or something. And we just kind
Mm.
of sent that to her through
Mhm.
the adoption agency, of course, on her 18th birthday. And, uh, part of it is, again, the hopes and dreams we have for relationships. Part of it was, and then instilled in me kind of like the hope of like, maybe she'll come looking for me. I want to meet her,
Wow.
kind of a thing. There's like that hope that maybe sending this gift will let her know that I care about her and whatever. But so 18th birthday passes, nothing, nothing, nothing. There's no communication, no contact. I don't know what's going on. So I'm just, I mean, I got 3 kids, a wife, a mortgage, just
Mhm.
working. So then I think it was about 7 years ago, I get a call from the birth mother. And she says, I think I'm in touch with our daughter. I was like, oh. So the birth mother, somebody gave her a gift of like the 23andMe chromosome, the
Uh-huh.
DNA thing. And so she registered on there. And so she put her thing up there. So, when you do that, they have a database. And
Mhm.
so you get an account online. And so you can see like other people that are related to you. And she
Yes.
said that there was a connection there. And the connection was, this is either a close relative or a child or a parent. The DNA matched up that closely that they said this. And they don't provide a picture or nothing like that, but it seems like they gave like an average date of birth or something. It was around the time that our daughter was born. And she's like, I think this is her.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so she just sent an innocuous message, is the story I was told, is that she just sent an innocuous message because on the website, you can send messages to each other, but it's through it's through their server. So it's not a direct connection. So they make everything anonymous.
Okay.
And she just sent a message to her saying, uh, this thing says this, this stupid program says that we're related. I wonder how we might be related.
Mhm.
And she just kind of sent it out, just as kind of like an open-ended question sort of a thing. And then got a response back. And then they went off of this computer system and started emailing each other directly. and eventually met. And the birth mother was just so happy to meet her and see her.
Yeah.
And so then she contacted me. She's like, "Would you like to meet her?" I'm like, "Sure, I'd love to." So um, she, the child lived in Philadelphia. And I was like, "Philadelphia? No, Pittsburgh." She lived in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
Lived in Pittsburgh. I was like, "Pittsburgh?" I'm like, "Does that mean she's a Steelers fan?" I don't know about meeting her.
That's funny.
Yeah. But
That's hilarious.
so she was coming to Baltimore with her husband and her child. She had like an 8-year-old child.
Mm-hmm.
She was coming to Baltimore to visit the birth mother for Thanksgiving. And so we made an arrangement to meet on the Friday, the day after Thanksgiving. She was going to come to my house. I was like really nervous about it. The most important message that I wanted her to know was that she was conceived in love, that she was conceived in love, and she was given up in love.
Mm-hmm.
And this wasn't just like so many, I don't know, so many times we hear stories about women that get pregnant and, the guy's nowhere to be found.
Yeah.
And I just wanted her to know, I wanted my child to know that she was conceived in love, and had it been different time or different circumstances, we would have kept her and raised her and, really wanted to do that. And that was my message to her, is that she was conceived in love. She wasn't just like kicked to the curb or, something like that. She wasn't given away because she wasn't wanted.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so she was 39 on the day that we met. She told a story that when she got this earring and necklace that we sent her on her 18th birthday, she's 18. She's coming home from college at Christmas time. Her birthday is in early January, so it's right after Christmas. So she's coming home. This package arrives. It has her name on it. And she opens it up. She sees it's a gift from her birth parents. And she's like confused, like, they're not supposed to know my name. She's like, my name was written on this card and on this package. They're not supposed to know my name. It's supposed to be anonymous. And we passed the gift through the adoption. The truth is, we passed the gift through the adoption agency. The adoption agency wrote her name on the card.
Oh,
But
okay.
we didn't know that, and she didn't know that. So, but she got really upset. And I mean, look at what I did when I was 18. Her mind is not, fully developed or whatever. But she got really upset, like her privacy was violated. Like that was a big thing for her. Like, my privacy's been violated. This can't happen. She ordered, she's 18 now, so she can do it. She ordered the file closed, and nobody can look at the file. Nobody can find me. I'm not going to find anybody else. And like, just shut the file down. And that was the end of it for her.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it was 20 years later that we met her, and we didn't meet her sooner, because that was her side of the story.
Yeah.
So we met in my living room, and we were going to meet for like an hour. We ended up talking for like 4 or 5 hours. I mean, just like, it was just so nice and so enriching. It was just really a good conversation. We talked about all these things. And her husband and son, they went to like the science center or something like that, while she was meeting with me. So it was just her and I alone.
Okay.
They came back to the house to pick her up or something. And so, or maybe it was my wife came home. Somebody came home anyway. And they're like, let's get a picture. And we're like, great. So we're standing in front of the fireplace. They're going to take a picture. I put my arm around her for the first time. And just like, it was magic. It was like magical. It was like, I put my arm around her and I was like, oh my God, this is my child. This is my child. This is all, it's just like, it was so, it just, it was like all that difficulty, all that heartache. And here's my child. She's alive.
Yeah.
She's alive and she's here and she's 39 years old. She is married. She has a kid. And it's just like, this is the life that I helped create. And it was
Mhm.
just really, it
That's
just made it
remarkable.
all worthwhile. It made it all.
In this, what's so important for everyone to know is that birth parents never cease to be parents. They never cease to love. They never cease to want the best. That birth parents still have hopes and dreams for their children.
Yes.
And that was a part of the way that you as birth parents could help her and to achieve those hopes and dreams that you both had for her. And so you still got to see, as we as parents always want to see the fruit of our labor,
Yes.
and you got to see it. And
Mhm.
what's so remarkable in hearing that is, just when you got to put your arm around her and that feeling, so much of what you said takes me back to the conversation I had with my son's birth parents um, and those very real things that they were concerned about. I think that this is what's interesting is while stories are different, there are still some things that are very, very that still remain the same.
Mhm.
And I remember when his birth mothers asked me how would he know how much she loved him, and how would he know that she never wanted to have to give him up.
Mhm.
And very em- the que- I remember our whole meeting. It was lighthearted, and we laughed and we talked and we got to that part, and that was hard. That was very, very hard. And I carried that with me, and I carried it because, well, one, it's important that I'm able to share that. But the other part of it is it made it very, very, very real that these are parents first. And this is how much they love their child, because he will never cease, even though I'm parenting him, he'll
Mhm.
never cease to be their child.
Yes.
And I think that's what's so important for people to understand is that even in that process, that child never ceases to be your child. There is no legal documents that can change that.
Yes.
And with that, again, as I said, there never ceases to be an overwhelming love. And so, thank you for sharing that. That was huge. And I think it came across so much differently because, again, we get to hear it from a father's
Yeah.
perspective we don't often get to hear,
Mhm.
and to hear the real emotion. And because you were very much a part of that process, you walked
Mhm.
through it and you felt, um, because again, I think it's also thought that the birth father or fathers in general don't feel that we don't have this connection, this emotion,
Yeah.
but we do. We do.
Yeah. And it's okay to have it and it's okay to share it.
Yeah.
That's what
It's
most men are raised that they're not supposed to or they can't or whatever.
Were you able to articulate that to your daughter?
Yes. Mhm. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And my one, I'll say one of my greatest moments, I don't know if it actually is or not, but one that I remember is the next year, uh, she came to visit again. And this time I had my mom and dad here. And so
wow.
she got to meet her grandparents, and her grandparents got to see her and see what they put up with. They, they contributed to this also. And the next year, my father died. And so
Ooh,
I'm so grateful that he had that chance to see
yeah.
how that all turned out. And I think that that was very heartwarming for him
Wow,
to know that he raised a good son and his son raised a, I didn't raise her, but that
you created.
I created it. Yes, yes, yeah, yeah. So yeah, for my mom and dad to be able to meet her, and I think some of my sisters were here too. So that was really, it was really nice to open that up again.
Yeah. To not to have to go from going from we don't say anything, which was a coping mechanism for them too.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
think it's important for us to say that so that people don't
Yeah.
come to this oh well they just were cold. People are coping in the ways that they cope. And they don't always look, the best to everybody, but
No.
that's just how we handle things.
Yes.
And so I can only imagine for them, being able to meet her and to see her that was that had to breathe new life in a different kind of way
Yeah.
into each
Well,
of them.
I would call it going from shame to pride, going from embarrassment to love. Yeah.
Shame to pride and embarrassment to love. That's profound.
Mhm.
Quite profound. As we are coming to a close, you've poured out in such an amazing way. Um, and I'm going to ask you to pour out one last time. And this is something I ask all of my guests. And because I always say that, and definitely I'm feeling it even more today that these shows are not just centered around one set community, meaning it's not just centered around the adoptive community. There's something that everyone can get. And definitely today, I feel like just in the conference in the ways we navigated this, there was so much that is applicable to so many. What is it that you would care to share as I say sprinkle? What are your thoughts? What do you want to pour out to people that you think is an important message for our listeners?
Uh, a long time ago, I read a book. It's called The Road Less Traveled.
Mm, yes.
And in that book, the first sentence in that book, do you know the first sentence in that book?
No. But I
It's
did know the book.
it's 3 words. The book
Mhm.
starts with 3-word sentence. Life is difficult.
Ooh.
Life is difficult. And he goes on for like 50 pages about how we're raised or we're brought up to believe that life is easy. And when we have the mindset that life is easy and difficulties come up in life, we get frustrated, disappointed, angry because life should be easy and here it is difficult. Because once you change your mindset to life is difficult as the premise, then when those challenges come up, when those difficulties come up, you're like, oh, it's just another bump in the road. It's not devastating. It's not a terrible thing. It's just the next challenge to overcome. It's just the next speed bump to go over or, the next wall to climb over. I just, so life is difficult. Life is full of difficult things to do. And oftentimes, and we can see this in practicing music, the hours and hours you spend practicing just to do a performance for an hour, you're like, wow, I practiced all that time just for an hour performance, right?
Yeah.
Or what athletes go through to train their bodies and just the work and the work ethic and the sweat that they go to just play a game for an hour. It's just like, um, so life is difficult. And, uh, making the difficult choices uh, pays dividends. So taking the road less traveled is oftentimes rewarding. I don't want to make a judgment and say it's more rewarding or less rewarding than any other path. It's just making the difficult choice and listening to your heart, listening to your gut. Somebody told me if you follow your heart, you'll never go wrong. Just follow your heart, uh, and do what's right for you.
Well, I don't know about anybody else, but that was necessary for me to hear. So thank you very, very much for
You're
that.
welcome.
It served as a great confirmation to some of the difficulties that I yet face. And so thank you. I
Yes.
can say that that
Mhm.
was personal for me. So thank you very, very much for that.
Yeah, you bet.
Um, Ben, thank you again for coming and having this conversation and um your transparency, your openness. As I said in the beginning, I knew it to be. I didn't know everywhere we were going, but I knew in the beginning this was going to be a necessary conversation that was going um, I believe, be very healing, very therapeutic, um, and so many more things to so many people. Um,
Mhm.
and I thank you just even being able to even kind of listen and from the adoptive parent standpoint, to listen to a birth father and really still feel this I have a greater bit of understanding in the way that my own son's birth parents feel on a regular, on a daily basis. I already knew it, but just to hear it again, there's something, and maybe somebody might find this to be strange, but there's something that is so necessary for me, so authentic for me, and it
Mhm.
still will help me and how I am also helping him to navigate his own story of love, of love.
Yes. Mhm.
That's the underlying part of love.
Yes.
So to my listeners, I pray that you um, got something amazing today. I pray that you share this with somebody, and that it helps them on their healing journey to whatever that journey is. Living authentically, living openly, that is probably the best thing that one can do. And so again, I thank you for this. And to my listeners, as always, I thank you for your time. I thank you for listening and sharing with us on today. If there's any information that you want on Journey to Josiah, you know you can find the website within the description of this podcast. And as always remember adoption changes lives and brings worlds together. I'll look forward to speaking to you same time, same place next Friday. Talk to you real soon. Bye.
Family, family, bringing our worlds together. Family, family, bringing our worlds together.